Warning: this narration may contain content that may not be suitable for all audiences. Listeners' discretion is advised. Furthermore, if you go on to enjoy this narration, be sure to like, comment and subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you can stay notified of all my uploads. Thank you. It was just this Christmas that went by, and things were getting busy. I had to start buying presents for the whole family. I had just finished shopping, but I still needed to grab a present for my little cousin. She's not very hard to shop for, since my cousin is only 4. She likes things like Peppa Pig and My Little Pony. She really liked, and I say liked for a reason, Max and Ruby. So when I decided to go looking for a present, I figured something like Max and Ruby would have been perfect, since she liked to watch the show on a daily basis. However, Christmas meant that not many online DVDs were available, and most would be sold out on most places. I went to look on eBay as well, but figured I could not trust what condition those DVDs would have been in. So I was stuck in a rut for a while, until that package arrived. I was at home, still scrolling for a stupid DVD, until I heard the sound of something being pushed into my letterbox. I caught hold of it before my dog did, and I stared at the package. It seemed to be wrapped fairly badly, with what looked like grease and other stains on it. Naturally, as anybody would, I decided to open the package. Inside was something that I couldn't explain. It was a Max and Ruby DVD, but I had never seen one like this online. It was like some little kid had drawn on the front cover with a marker. The title was just Max and Ruby, with what looked like a poorly drawn illustration. There were no names or anything, but on the back, it had a list of 4 episodes, all with very blunt titles. Episode _ 0001, 0002, 0003, 0004. I quickly gave the DVD a watch over, and to my surprise, all the episodes were in perfect quality, and seemed to have no flaws. It was as if it was just a real DVD with a homemade cover. The only thing that appeared odd was the episode selection screen. The episodes had names, but they were just all titled Max and Ruby, with the numbers being changed as it went down on the list. The actual selection screen was just a plain white screen with black text. Nothing else. After giving it much thought, I decided to change the cover to something a little nicer by printing out a DVD cover that I had found on Google and tracked down the name of the episode so that they were labelled correctly. So I left the episode list alone because I figured it would be self-explanatory. Christmas went by, and things were fine. I gave my little cousin her DVD, and she was happy with it all through and through. But that was only because she had not watched it yet. On Boxing Day, the family had gone out for lunch and left me to babysit my cousin. I was not too bothered about being left at home with her, and I figured it was a good time to put the DVD on. I had put the DVD in and allowed it to play while I was in the kitchen eating my dinner. From what I could hear, she had watched episodes 1 to 3 so far. I was just about to finish off my noodles when I heard my cousin screaming from the other room. Dropping everything, I ran into the living room and saw my cousin on the floor, curled up and screaming. I had looked up at the TV and I felt my heart crawl into my throat. What I caught a glimpse of was one of the most horrifying things I had ever seen. It was what appeared to be a frame of Max and Ruby standing next to each other, in complete darkness. But what made it more horrific was their lack of faces. They had lost their noses and their mouths, and their eyes were replaced with big black holes. The colours were a disgusting blood red, and there was faint static in the background. The sound was replaced with what sounded like the Max and Ruby theme playing backwards, with the faint sound of static in the mix of it all. It had to be the most disturbing thing I had ever seen, and it must have been on the screen for at least 20 seconds before that screen went to black, and our TV set turned off, which alone was weird, because TVs don't usually turn off by themselves. Luckily, I was about able to calm down my cousin, telling her it wasn't real, and she had just had a nightmare as she had fallen asleep in front of the TV. However, I knew in my mind it was completely real. My parents had rung me up and told me they were going to be out all night, and this was the best opportunity to look at this DVD more closely. I didn't mention it to them, and as soon as they hung up, I grabbed the DVD before popping it into my laptop, and as soon as it loaded, I noticed that episode 0004 had now been replaced with RIP, Mummy and Daddy, which sent a deep chill down my back. Since my cousin was now asleep, I plunged in my earbuds so I could sleep without having to hear anything. Normally, an episode of Max and Ruby would feature 3 short stories, but this episode had only 1. It started off quite happy. Max and Ruby were playing tag in their garden, and their parents were on the porch watching them play. However, something was off. The sound was playing in reverse, and the parents' faces were that of sadness. It panned to the mother and father, and in a voice of deep sorrow, the father spoke. "It's such a shame," he sighed. It then cut short to the sound of static and a loud scream, followed by the 2 of them choking. The sounds felt so real, it almost made me physically sick. The scene then transitioned to both Max and Ruby standing in front of a labelled gravestone. "Rest in peace, Mummy and Daddy" were written on it. 2 of them had no faces. At this point, there was no sound at all, apart from very faint static. This scene remained on screen for about 1.5 minutes before it cut away to black. It then changed again, now showing Max and Ruby sitting in Ruby's room. Both of them were sobbing. The sobs were so realistic and heart-wrenching, it sounded like somebody actually recorded a real person mourning. What happened next was the most disgusting, yet saddest thing I have ever witnessed. The scene had changed to Max sitting in his room. He was standing on a chair with a noose hanging from a ceiling. He placed the noose around his neck. My computer scene faded to black as the static got louder. Almost instantly, it then cut to Ruby walking in on her brother. She let out a horrific scream as the background turned to black. The camera was panned on her face as the sound of a chair being kicked and that same choking sound from before began to play. The picture of Ruby's face stayed on screen for a good 5 minutes. This time, her eyes had returned as the same gaping holes. Ruby then began to cry, and as before, there were no other facial features. The static grew louder and drowned out all of the sounds of her crying. The scene then cut to black with a loud static, When the screen returned, Ruby was now standing on her own, in the garden by 2 gravestones. One was the infamously labelled "Rip Mummy and Daddy," and the other, "Rip Brother." At this point, I had already thrown up, and I was sitting all shaken. The episode appeared to have come at an end, at last, as an old computer noise began playing. I was just about to eject the DVD, when the same image came up like it did on the TV. This time, however, there was text above the 2 bunnies, which said, "Death is our only release." There were no credits or anything. It stayed on this for a few seconds before the DVD popped out of my laptop. I sat there, trying to contemplate what the hell had just happened. In my shock and my fear, I made the foolish decision to break the DVD up as much as I could before leaving the house. Afterward, I finally shoved the pieces down a drain. Thankfully, I had kept a few screenshots and saved them to my laptop. The next few days went about uneventfully. I had a few nightmares about that DVD, but luckily, that was about all. My cousin had gone back home to her family. It was a late night and my parents had gone out for dinner, leaving me alone to watch the TV. I heard what sounded like somebody posting something through the door. At this point, that DVD had left my mind, since I had just not told anybody about it. However, it all came flooded back when I looked down at the letter in front of me. It was just messily folded up and said, "Death is our only release." And that, my dogs, was Max and Ruby, episode 0004. A Max and Ruby, I guess, haunted DVD creepypasta. My final thoughts on this story? Ooh, it's not as good as I remembered it to be. I think I saw this around the same time I'd saw Squidward's suicide. So not only did I have to deal with the blood-red eyes of Squidward, I had to deal with the 2 black eyes of Max and Ruby. Now, I did actually have to get footage from, I guess, the fan-made videos in order to put it into my editing software for my Easy Street video. If you haven't seen it, go ahead. I'm not really scared of them, to be honest. It looks like a shitty Photoshop, and I think that's just about how to describe it. It has cliches out the ass, the infamous eBay, realistic screams, something at the end, you know, creepy stuff like death is our only release, like a letter again. It hits all the cliches. So if I had to give this story a final rating, I'm giving it a 5. It's just flat across the board, an even Steven, if you will. Not really too memorable, but overall, not bad, but not good either, literally middle tier. Anyways, this has been the Dark Author, and I hope you enjoyed this narration, and I'll see you in the next video. Good night.